The content provided in this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended for a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your doctor or other qualified health professionals with any questions you may have regarding your medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast.
On today's episode, we will be celebrating people with type 1 diabetes and the amazing things that they are achieving, welcoming former Olympic swimmer Meagen Nay. We are your hosts, Isabella and Sebastian Harris.
This is Life on the Level. If you're listening, you probably have or know someone with type 1 diabetes. We're here to give you the knowledge and encouragement so you can thrive. Join us as we dive into all things type 1, real experiences, expert insights, and practical strategies.
As we've mentioned a few times before, diabetes is an invisible illness.
Really?
Yeah, I know. Shock.
Crazy.
After 10 episodes, we finally realised. But it doesn't stop you from doing things. There's a lot of people with some magnificent stories who have done great things even with diabetes.
We've put together a list of some people stomping down on the stigma of type 1 diabetes and proving that nothing is impossible. The first one is Halle Berry. In 2002, she became the first Black actress to win the Oscar for the Best Actress for her role in Monsters Ball. She was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in her early 20s after she actually fell into DKA. And she said initially her diagnosis left her petrified, thinking she was, quote, going to die. And now she says, quote, diabetes turned out to be a gift and it gave me strength and toughness because I had to face reality no matter how uncomfortable or painful it was. Which I think it's really inspiring little thing to say.
Yeah, and especially with someone who is sometimes, like we hear all the big celebrities with diabetes, but I wouldn't have guessed Halle would have had it. It's a bit of a shock.
To call it a gift,
I
mean, it's a present I'm willing to return.
Yeah.
But I like that she's put it that way and I like her mindset to think like that.
Yeah. Also having that mindset of turning it into a positive is also a really admirable thing.
Yeah.
Another famous person who has diabetes is the commentator and former Australian Wallabies player, Rod Kafer, who was diagnosed at the age of 15. He said that diabetes can either be a detriment to your life or an enhancer. Everyone makes that choice, which is never easy. Not a day goes by without me wishing I did not have to have an injection, do a blood test, eat for the sake of eating, or recover from the inevitable hypo.
Yeah.
That to me sums up what it's like to have diabetes so well.
Eat for the sake of eating is such a big one for me. It's like, I'm not hungry.
And you just eat because you go, well, I have to.
Because you've got to live. Yeah, I guess you've got to live. Yeah, you do have to. Well,
you have to live.
You do. Yeah. False positivity.
Yeah.
You have to live. Look after yourself. You've got to. Another one who is in the sporting that I don't know much about, the retired professional AFL player for Greater Western Sydney Giants, Sam Reid. So he was diagnosed as a 20-year-old in 2010. And after having a surgery, he lost a lot of weight, which actually led him to be diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. Oh. Something funny that I think this is pretty cool. He has a tattoo of a dartboard on his stomach because he was told when he was diagnosed that that's where you have to inject, like on your stomach. So on his tattoo, he said, quote, not to make a complete light of the situation with me being diagnosed, but I just wanted to have a little bit of fun with it and let people know that I hadn't changed too much. How funny is that? I even read that he'd sometimes decided that he'd like put it in different spots of the dartboard occasionally.
Just to see how many points he could rack up.
Yeah, how many points for this injection do you get?
Trying to go for a triple 20.
Yeah, I think that's really nice that he's trying to make light of the situation. And he clearly, humour has not changed since he's been diagnosed. So there you go. It doesn't change everything. You're still funny.
Yeah, and if you're not going to make light of it, no one else is going to make light of it for you.
No, you've got to make light of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've made a couple of jokes throughout this, but if you don't laugh, you cry. And sometimes you do both. That's all right as well.
Yeah. Another amazing person who also has diabetes is the Australian-born international supermodel, Bambi Northwood Blythe, who was diagnosed at the age of 11. She said, my family and I had no idea of what diabetes was. We hadn't met anyone with it, and there was no family history. It was a shock. It's a shock, all right.
Yeah, she's quite vocal about it and has posted quite a lot about her diagnosis and her journey, and it's quite inspiring and interesting to think that, I mean, losing weight as someone with diabetes is something that I always thought was impossible. And to maintain that figure, to be a supermodel, that's insane control on her behalf. So good on her.
Yeah, and I know that sometimes when I will sometimes look in the mirror and see my CGM, I go, I surely can't look good with this.
Yeah, or the marks, like the bruises and stuff that you get. But she's rocking it.
All power
she's rocking the runway. Good on her. Now, the next one is the love of my life.
Yes.
And I guess he's also a musician, Nick Jonas. So he was diagnosed when he was 13 years old. He's now a founder of a non-for-profit organisation changing what it means to live with diabetes, which is very wholesome. And when younger people ask him how he manages his condition, he states, quote, I let them know that I don't have it all figured out and chasing perfection with type 1 diabetes is impossible. There's so much that's out of your hands and finding a way to remain calm and patient in moments where diabetes interrupts your life is key. Now, I could talk about him forever, so yeah. I remember before I was diagnosed, I used to watch the Jonas Brothers on Disney and I was diagnosed when I was 11 and then I found out after I was diagnosed that he was type 1. And then he immediately that cemented that he was my favourite Jonas brother. He was always my favourite Jonas brother, but the fact that it's a community thing. We're, one of us.
Support your brothers and sisters.
One of us. Yeah. So, I mean, he's married now and whatnot, but
off the table.
Yeah, it's all right in another life.
Another famous person who has type 1 diabetes is the former British Prime Minister Theresa May, who was actually diagnosed type 2 originally, but it was a misdiagnosis. But she has been very active in promoting education and awareness. She has written to local schools to get them to support those kids with diabetes and has also done some research, JDRF.
Someone else who has type 1 diabetes is Jeremy Robertson, who is actually a doctor and a pilot. He was diagnosed in 2010 when he was 31. Yeah, I don't know. I always hear people say I'd rather be diagnosed when they're older. I've met a lot of people who are diagnosed when they're older and they say that they prefer that because they've had their fun teen years and whatever. But I still think like it's a learning curve. I don't know. There's no good time to be diagnosed, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, he was a pilot at the time who'd been flying for about 9 years. And when he was in America to do a course, he started experiencing symptoms and he got quite blurry vision, which even his glasses weren't fixing. So he took himself to a medical centre and his BGL was 25.5 and that's
elevated.
That's how he got diagnosed. So he thought his career was over as a pilot. And after being told it basically was, he realised there wasn't any protocol for people with type 1 diabetes to become a pilot. And so he wrote one himself. And now he can fly again. So that's pretty cool.
That's a legacy that I'd like to lead.
Yeah, that is good on him. But yeah, he's an overachiever. Look him up. We'll put it in the show notes. Crazy.
And one final person that we'll go over is Sonia Sotomayor, who is a Associate Justice and Jurist on the Supreme Court of the US. Very high-ranking position. She's been in there since August 2009, and she is also the first Hispanic and Puerto Rican in the Supreme Court.
Right.
She actually gives an amazing quote, which I think is just perfect for trying to get your head around what the right mindset is to have with diabetes. She says, "My diabetes is such a central part of my life. It did teach me discipline. It also taught me about moderation. I've trained myself to be super vigilant because I feel better when I'm in control."
Fair enough.
But discipline,
yeah.
moderation.
Yeah, I think everyone deals with it differently and everyone copes with it differently. And like if your mindset is to have that strong discipline sort of control, then as long as you're looking after yourself, I think.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, diabetes shouldn't control you. You should control it.
Yeah, it doesn't control you. Shouldn't.
And speaking of achieving the unachievable, we are lucky enough to have Meagen Nay, former Olympic swimmer, join us today.
Hi, Meagen. Thanks for joining us on the podcast. How are you feeling today?
Yeah, good morning or afternoon, whatever it is. Yeah, pretty good. Pretty excited.
That's good.
Hi, how are you?
I'd say g'day. Pretty good.
G'day,
yeah, doing pretty good.
From Dubai. Yeah.
Yeah, so I can say g'day, which is quite nice. So I'm pretty stoked to be chatting to you guys. So let's do it.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us.
Okay, first question then. When were you diagnosed and how did you find out you had type 1? And also, can you explain the difference with LADA?
Yeah, well, to be fair, I was diagnosed nearly 3 years ago. I had no idea what diabetes was. I used to swim professionally, so I was pretty fit. And I just kept getting no diabetes in the family, and I just kept getting sick. I had tonsillitis a couple of times, and I was like, what is going on with my body? Because I'm so used to being really in tune. So I remember going to my doctor, and he's like, oh, let's just do all the blood tests. Maybe you've got chronic fatigue. I don't know, maybe you need to get your tonsils out or something. And I just kept reoccurring the tonsillitis. So I actually booked in to see an ENT doctor to maybe get my tonsils out. And I'll never forget, it was an Australia Day weekend. My doctor rang me about 3 times in half a day. I was having a good time. It was a long weekend. And I was like, can this person stop calling me? I know, right?
Yeah.
I was like, why is the doctor calling me? And I just remember not calling him back. And my mum was like, okay, Megs, like there's obviously something wrong if someone calls you.
If a doctor's calling you. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember calling him and he's like, yeah, you've got to go to hospital. Your results came back. You're actually a diabetic. And I was like, nah, like that's probably not right. Like no one in my family. So anyway, ended up in hospital and yeah, they went through everything, explained everything and the onset of adult type 1. So, and then from there, yeah, my world kind of changed a lot. I really didn't know anything about diabetes. And here I am kind of 3 years on and I wouldn't say enjoying diabetes, but enjoying the kind of ride of learning and, you know, just educating people around diabetes and the stigma around diabetes and just pretty much trying to say that I can do everything that I was doing before. And I'm so lucky to have such a supportive network and I just feel like it's an interesting conversation to have with people. So here I am.
Yeah. So how old exactly were you when you were diagnosed?
I'm 35 now. So what, like 32?
32. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So I was 11. So that's a little bit of a... And so I guess the difference between LADA, isn't it? What is the difference, I guess, for those who don't know? I don't really know, to be honest. Is there any difference between those who are diagnosed with type 1 when they're younger, or is there any sort of... Because you mentioned that you were partying and whatnot on a weekend. I guess you weren't really at DKA stage, but were you feeling yucky? Were you... Like, I know you were getting illnesses and stuff, but were you, you know... And, like, what was your sugar? Like, so many questions.
So many questions. And to be fair, like, because I didn't know anything about diabetes. So I just remember as soon as I got diagnosed, I was like, obviously Google. Google's my best friend. I was like, what is LADA?
Yeah.
I think leading up to that, I had all the symptoms and I just never put it together because no one in my family actually had diabetes. So, and I put it down to training. You know, I was hydrated and therefore, you know, would go to the toilet all the time and I had wake up, a little bit of blurred vision and I was like, you know, maybe I'm just sleepy, fatigue, always thirsty. I was like, well, I'm training pretty hard, so obviously I'm just thirsty.
True, okay.
So all of those symptoms. To be fair, like now with type 1, I don't actually feel the difference too much from like LADA from the start and then to here. Obviously rapid insulin is probably my best friend right now. So that's the major kind of maybe difference. At the start, I was just on long-acting insulin overnight.
Like a longer honeymoon phase, I guess?
Yeah. I think the honeymoon stage actually lasted for about 2 years. So I was pretty lucky.
You should have just seen Sebastian and I look at each other. I don't even think I had one.
I didn't have one,
I didn't have one. I was so sick. I was out. They were like, yeah, no, that's not a thing. I was like, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe that is a big difference. Well, maybe just for you, I have no idea. Actually, don't know anyone with it except you now.
Yeah, and I think everyone obviously, like my big thing is like be you. So everyone is very different. So I've spoken to a lot of diabetics, you know, like yourselves have as well. And everyone is so different. That's what I say to people. Like you can't ever really compare. Like you can compare, like you're talking about diabetes, yes, but your plan and your individuality is different of how you react, of how your body reacts. But maybe I was just pretty lucky there with 2 years of honeymoon stage. And then I just had like this inkling feeling that I needed to... It was so weird. Like I needed to kind of get on top of my diabetes, if that makes sense. I just felt like within me that something was not going okay. So
trust your gut.
Yeah, trust your gut. Reached out to one of the most amazing diabetes educators and she literally nearly like pretty much saved my life. Been on long acting insulin on a CGM. So all this stuff is nearly new to me again. So
It's a learning curve.
Crazy.
Yeah, especially when you decide to take a different path in it or try different devices or different types of insulin even. It's like you're relearning the illness. And I guess with that, so I was a swimmer when I was a kid as well. And I was diagnosed at 11, and that's sort of sad to say stopped a lot of my swimming. Not all of it, but a lot of it, because it's cardio, it's scary. Now I have a pump. I didn't back then, but even dealing with devices going in pools and stuff, horrible, annoying, taking them off for a long period of time, you can't really do that. I guess, how do you fight the stigma on that, and how are you sort of dealing with sport and things like that?
I was pretty lucky through my swimming career, lucky enough to go to 2 Olympics and some Worlds and some Commonwealth Games, and I never had anything. I didn't even know what diabetes was then. So for me, I didn't even know anything about it. So I actually retired in 2015 and then went and did everything I shouldn't do, went and traveled and partied and did all that kind of stuff. And then I got diagnosed. So for me, it's on the other side. Like I do a little bit of sport now, like gym, and nothing crazy that I used to do professionally.
You haven't tried to address crazy swimming again?
No.
Okay. No, that's interesting.
Absolutely not.
That is very interesting, because I always wonder how that's a whole thing to deal with in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I follow, there's some other professional swimmers who had diabetes when they were swimming. So always had a bit of a chat around that as well. But with the stigma now, I get a lot of questions like, how do you just get diabetes? What do you mean? Like, surely there's someone in your family that had it, and, oh, you mustn't be able to eat this and you mustn't be able to eat that. And sometimes I feel like don't talk about it. They're not very well educated on it. They just go, oh, that's a subject I don't know. And they don't really...
Scary.
Yeah, it's scary, and they don't want to offend you, and then they just don't talk about it. Where I'm like, nah, easy. Like, I'll educate you and we can talk about it, and I'm kind of stuck with it. So, what do you want me to do? Like, I'm not going to be sad and cry about it all the time. So for me, just about educating people. I had a guy the other day, I was wearing my CGM and had a singlet on, and I was walking up the street, and he was like, is that a Dexcom G6? And I was like, oh my God, you're speaking my language. Yeah, so he was a type 1 diabetic as well. And we just sat there and just had a chat for about 30 minutes. So
I love that. I love the bond.
Stuff like that.
You just see random people and you're like, I will do anything you need me to. If you've killed someone, I'm going to say you didn't. I was your alibi. You were there. You're one of us.
Okay.
Well, maybe not for you, Sebastian. I'll take that off the record. We're not doing anything illegal over here.
No, but it's nice, like, when you see a fellow diabetic, you can talk about something, and sometimes that can just be, if you're in a tiny little funk, or, someone's not understanding you, just that little conversation with someone who has been through that or is going through that can sometimes just shine a little bit of light into your world if you're having one of those days. So
yeah,
it's always nice when you have a chat with fellow diabetes friends.
So what would you say to those who feel alone or are too nervous to speak up or say anything, who also have diabetes?
I think talking about it, for me, don't get me wrong, like, I'm still super scared about, like, some days I'll go, oh my God, my feet are going to fall off, or I'm going to get heart disease or something crazy, like my mind kind of just, it goes at 100 miles an hour forward. But I think being able to talk about it with someone safe, I am super lucky that my diabetes educator, I literally can message her and ask her anything, and I go, diabetes, this is shit. I'm over it. I don't want to be diabetic anymore. And having maybe 1 or 2 safe people that you can have a chat to, I feel like is really important. And then just having a supportive, whether it's a person, whether it's a friend, whether it's a coach, whether it's a fellow diabetic, having someone who can support you through the good days, the bad days, anything like that. But I think for me, the biggest thing is talking about it and not being afraid that if someone says, oh, are you a diabetic? And you go, yeah, I am. And not being scared of not acknowledging it. I think, having the confidence to own it. And I know that everyone doesn't have that confidence to own it all the time. But, over time, if, just say, yep, I've got diabetes, and that can be the first step in gaining confidence back. So I'd say have a couple of safe people, being willing to talk about it, and also being willing to learn. I feel like diabetes for me, I'm still learning all the time.
Yeah.
Still learning, still educate myself on things. And when you chat to other diabetic friends as well, like you can learn a little bit off them too. So, and being not scared to learn.
The support network. We always say this. It's your support network. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
What words of wisdom would you give yourself, I guess, 3 years ago when you were diagnosed? In, I guess, dealing with diabetes, what would you sort of say to yourself?
I'd probably say, like, listen to your body. Your body is definitely trying to tell you something. And for me, it was, my mind is very strong. I've pushed my body nearly my whole life to achieve some crazy dreams of swimming at the Olympics. And my mind is probably a lot stronger than my body. And so my body was trying to tell me something and my mind was like, no, like as if you have this or as if you have that, you can push through no matter how strong you are. So listen to your body and realize that it's okay. It's okay if you have a bad day. It's okay if you're freshly diagnosed and everything is overwhelming. I'll be 4 years in January. So that 4 years and I'm still, some days are overwhelming. And I'm sure you guys, you know, since being 11, you were diagnosed, like I'm sure there's days where you get overwhelmed as well.
It's hard not to.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
It's so okay to feel like that. So it's not something that you have to do alone. So having that confidence and having that support network and just realizing it's okay to have those bad days.
Do you celebrate your diversary just on that?
Do I celebrate it? No, I don't really. I remember it.
Yeah.
I don't really celebrate too much. I remember it and I'm just probably really grateful that I'm still here and grateful that I've got a good support network and grateful that, you know, I just want to be kind of the best human I can be with diabetes.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's a really good mindset, I think, to have that where you don't celebrate it, but it's still something you go like, yeah, I've done this.
Yeah.
It's like a good reminder.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That's what I do. I go, like, I have it written down and I know the date off by heart, but you know, you just add it in and you just sort of mentally note, yep,
Done another one.
tick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tick it off.
Yeah. And I think that's like a lot of self-love, you know, like a lot of people probably go, oh, what's wrong with me? I've got diabetes. And just realizing, give yourself a bit of self-love. Like, yeah, go like, hell yeah. Like I did another year, you know, I'm still here for another year. And yeah, I just think it's a nice little way of going to yourself that you did another year. You prove that you can go through all this stuff. You're still enjoying life, hopefully.
Yeah. It's funny that you said like your mindset is so strong that you weren't listening to your body. For me, like I always say mind over matter because I always listen to my body. Like I think that's very important to me that I'm always listening to my body. But I guess it's important that people know that mind over matter, but listen to your body as well. Like not mind over everything as well. Make sure to look after yourself rather than putting yourself in a bad situation.
Yeah. And I think, listening to your body, because your body will actually tell you nearly everything that you need. But for me, like coming from a professional athlete background, you would push your body to its absolute max. And for that, it was mind over body.
Yeah.
That was trying to push yourself. So something like diabetes is being able to listen to your body, but also being strong enough to act on that, I think is a big thing. So acting on how your body feels and not just I was pushing it to the side and
not there.
Yeah, it's not there. Like if I don't think about it, it's not there, right?
It's still there. Sorry to tell you.
It's still there.
Yep.
So yeah, I'd say self-love and listen to your body and a positive mindset. Everyone thinks I'm super positive and super like, oh my God, how good's life? But just a reminder, like it's okay that you have crappy days.
Do you?
100%. My partner is working over here now and sometimes he just like comes home and I'm just like chilling on the couch and he's like, what's up? And I was like, oh, I just had a bad day. I'm just having a moment. Or like my thing is like, I'm just having a moment. So if I'm having a moment, it's okay. Like I allow myself to have a moment and then I kind of move on.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I'll be in a funk all day. So
Don't dwell.
Yeah, I have a moment and then I go, okay, chat to self, let's get up and do something that makes me feel me and makes me feel happy, whether it's exercise, whether it's the ocean or something, you know, whether it's journaling or anything like that. So I had one the other day. I had a little moment the other day and I was just a bit overwhelmed. So I'm sure my diabetes educator, Kate, it just probably hates getting my messages sometimes.
I think, no, that's what they're there for. They're there to support you. And mine says that to me all the time. I'm like, sorry to bother you. She's like, that's why I'm here. It's what I'm doing. So don't ever feel bad.
Yeah. I think I've told her maybe 4 times I don't want to be diabetic anymore. So that's probably like my 4? Famous line.
Only 4?
Yeah. Probably in the last month.
Okay, all right.
4 times in the last month.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Oh, well, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolute pleasure, guys.
Oh, thanks so
thank
much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, have a good day.
I appreciate it. Thanks, legends. Easy.
As we wrap up another episode of Life on the Level, we want to thank you for being part of the supportive community. Your stories, questions, and just being here fuel our mission to offer meaningful support and education to people living with diabetes. Keep the conversation going, stay connected, and remember, together, we're stronger. Don't forget to follow the show to hear more wherever you listen to your podcasts.
This podcast is brought to you by the National Diabetes Services Scheme. The NDSS is an initiative of the Australian Government and is administered by Diabetes Australia.
Diabetes Australia acknowledges Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples as the traditional owners and custodians of this country. We pay the utmost respect to them, their cultures, and to their elders, past and present. We extend that respect to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. Diabetes Australia is committed to improving health outcomes for all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people affected by diabetes and those at risk.
All experiences and opinions described in this podcast are those of each individual guest. Your experience and management may be different.